What is up, everybody? It's Joe here with Joseph Blake Photography, and in today's video we have a Sony camera coming. It's coming in November. Let's talk about what we think it is. I have an idea and what we think the specs might be. Let's jump in. Hey everybody, my name is Joe and I am a portrait and adventure photographer here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And this is my channel, Joseph Blake Photography, where we talk about tech and news and gear and reviews and how-tos, and we go out on adventures. It's all about the technology that we use to create the content that we do, whether it's here on YouTube, elsewhere in social media, if you're delivering to clients, if you're shooting weddings, if you're shooting your friends and family, if you're shooting skateboard videos, music video, whatever it is that you're doing, if you are creating, we talk about the gear that we use and the way that we use it here on this channel. If that's the kind of thing that's interesting to you, I would appreciate it if you went ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if at the end of the video you think that I've done a good job, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button. Speaking of the end of the video, watching to the end of the video is the one thing that the YouTube algorithm really seems to care about. I'd really appreciate it if you did that. All my social media links are down below. Check out my website. Let's jump in and talk about this camera. Sony enthusiasts know that it has been a rather slow year. We haven't really seen much. And cameras that we normally start to see leak details on, some reviews, early sneak peeks, we really haven't seen. Which is weird because Sony has a relatively robust lineup of cameras, especially in the full frame side of things, that we would expect to be seeing, especially as we come towards the end of the year. But there's been kind of a halt on Sony releases. We got an update to the ZV-E10, the Mark III, we got the A7 III, and we got a standard range zoom lens. That's honestly not a lot when you look at what's coming from Canon, Nikon, Fuji, and the rest. It's been a slow Sony year. Now we're starting to hear rumors as the year comes to a close about a potential update and pretty much a guaranteed event or release at the end of November. What we don't know for absolute certain is what that camera is going to be. We do have some rumors from late in the summer, as well as a white paper release from Sony that somewhat indicates the direction that they might be going. We can also kind of take a look at the product roadmap and kind of read the tea leaves to figure out what might be in the pipeline. Now, I've already done a video about what we thought the A1 Mark II might look like if we're going to get it, and that would be something probably for next year. With the A7 III coming out earlier this year, that points to an A7 release, and if you look at what's on the roadmap now for A7 series cameras, the A7 IV is the kind of the longest in the tooth full-frame camera body that Sony has, especially considering its market position and the fact that normally we get those cameras every 2 to 3 years. And it's been since October of 2021 that we actually saw the update to the A7. And the A7, which I think honestly a lot of us can say kind of kicked off the mirrorless revolution and really started things for Sony in the Alpha mirrorless line, has been a phenomenally
real-time eye autofocus for animals is also provided,
for its photo quality and capability, as well as what it brings on the video side. Price-wise, it comes in around $2,500, which is right there in that sweet spot for the enthusiast and prosumer. Similar to, say, the EOS R6 Mark II. The current iteration of the A7 is coming in with a 33 megapixel sensor. It shoots at 10 frames per second. On the video side of things, it's shooting 4K 60. But not just 4K 60, it's got a super high bit rate. It shoots 422 10-bit, and that 4K 10-bit is actually downscaled 7K. It comes with their S-Cinetone preset as well as S-Log3, and its real-time autofocus system does eye autofocus for humans, birds, and animals. And that's both in photo mode and in video mode. And in video mode, it has 5-axis in-body image stabilization. I'm reading off specs that all sound like, to be quite honest, a very modern, mid-range, capable shooter. What about this camera could or would they update? And I think the one area where we could see some potential improvement, number one is resolution, and number two is going to be in frame rates and video capability, which is where some of these rumors are coming from. Sony, in addition to being a camera maker, they make a lot of stuff. You might have a Sony TV in your house. They also make image sensors that other companies can just buy and put in their products, which means that Sony has a product page for their image sensors, and normally you can point to those sensors and draw a line to which cameras on the Sony side of things they're in. And we have a new sensor that has been recently added to their product lineup that doesn't seem to have a home in a Sony camera. The fact that we now have an announcement for a new camera body, well, I don't think it's crazy to think that those are connected. Now, before we go over the specs of this sensor, I want to say right away that I am still kind of 50-50 as to whether or not this sensor would land in an A7V or if it would land in something else. But I want you to be the judge of that and tell me down in the comments. From what I've seen, folks posting in response to some of these rumors, the reception seems mixed. About half of everyone says, well, if this is real, then I'm going to upgrade. And the other half are saying, why not stay with kind of where you are in terms of what this camera brings to the market. So if we look at the product information for this new sensor, it is the IMX366AJK. And this is a 45 or 44.9 megapixel sensor with 44.5 effective megapixels. So once it's loaded into a camera body, it would probably be marketed as a 44 megapixel sensor. And this sensor actually has a high-speed shooting readout mode of up to 26 frames per second in full resolution in 14-bit. Additionally, there are options to shoot in even faster modes similar to the A9 III with lower resolution and potentially lower bitrate. For example, one of the readout modes is an 8 megapixel 12-bit readout at 120 frames per second. Now that's not the full resolution mode that you would see in the A9 III, and 8 megapixels isn't very big. I could see high-speed shooting environments like sports and action where that might be appreciated in very particular situations. There's also a 16:9 crop mode that's 60 frames per second in 12-bit. This sensor obviously has a lot of new potential configurations that could be programmed into a camera body if that were to be the A7V. Now, 44 megapixels is pretty decent resolution and much higher than you traditionally see at this price point or market segment. And you might be asking the same question that I'm asking, which is, well, where does that put the A7R? Well, I mean, it's due for an upgrade as well, and maybe next year we see something in the 80 megapixel range. But really, we just don't know. Now, while the A7 IV has a really great autofocusing system, the one thing that we're hearing as an additional rumor for the release that we're going to be seeing in November, and this should not come as a surprise to anyone who has watched any of my recent videos about Canon cameras or action cameras or drones or anything, is it's coming with an AI chip. And that AI chip will do improved autofocus and improved low light noise reduction. I mean, that's pretty much what we're putting AI chips into stuff for anyway. I would expect to see a bump on the base ISO for this camera. Right now, the ISO range is 100 to 51,000. I would expect that to go up to 100,000 with expansion up to maybe 400,000. Again, incorporating a considerable amount of AI denoising machine learned features. You're going to hear AI all over these releases from Sony and from everybody else going forward. Now, that's what it's capable of. We don't know necessarily if they would market it at the full 26 frames per second full readout speed that it can do. They might cap that at 18 or 20 or 22 to avoid cannibalizing other products. But speaking of specifications that this sensor can do that they may not put in the camera, is that it will be able to shoot 8K at 30 frames per second. Actually, maybe even higher. Though I would not anticipate that in this camera, and nothing that we've heard has indicated that that is going to be a feature. But we likely will see an upgrade on the 4K up to 120 frames per second. We may see an inclusion of a 6K mode maybe at 30 or 24 frames per second to utilize a little bit more of the resolution out of that camera. We'll probably see an increase also in the top end of the shutter speed. Right now it is 1/8,000th. They could send that as high as 16 or 32,000. We'll see. I think this sensor would be capable of all of that. The question is whether or not they want to dial that in and sell that from the marketing side of things. Again, assuming that this sensor is where they're headed and whether or not this camera will be getting it. But I can tell you that there's no other sensors that are currently anywhere near the horizon that we can see that would potentially be a candidate to go into an A7V. But again, the reason that we are pretty confident that there's going to be an A7V is that honestly the A7 IV was popular, both for its mix of quality imaging, decent speed, good video capability, and an affordable price with access to the entire E-mount lens system. That's what people want, especially if they're getting into full frame for the first time, or if they're moving into videography or photography for the first time. This is a great entrant into the Sony system, and I think an A7V like this with these specs would definitely continue that reputation. That's it for me, just a quick Bit of info and rumor here on Sony's lineup and where they're going to be going. Again, it's been pretty quiet. Hopefully we'll see some here at the end of the year. I'm a Canon shooter, but I love Sony cameras and I love competition in the market. That's the most important thing. We've got to have people that can compete for our dollars. If you found this video informative, I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button. And if this is the kind of thing that you're into, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell if you want to be notified when I post new videos. And obviously all of my social media links are down below, as well as a list of all the gear that I use. That's it for me. I'm gonna go pack up and head out to do more shoots because it is the busy season of shooting families and babies and dogs. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks.